Dexter Morgan versus the deadliest killers in TV and movie history. These are 5 of fiction's most notorious killers who would face off against Michael C. Hall's methodical, vigilante serial killer in a deadly game of cat and mouse. From Anthony Hopkins' cannibalistic psychiatrist Hannibal Lecter to supernatural stalkers like Michael Myers. Each represents a different level of threat to television's most calculating Bay Harbor butcher. Dexter Morgan isn't your typical serial killer. Working as a forensic blood spatter analyst for the Miami Metro Police Department by day, he becomes a vigilante hunter by night, targeting murderers who have escaped justice. With at least 135 confirmed kills under his belt, Dexter follows a strict code taught by his adoptive father, Harry Morgan. Only kill those guilty of murder and never get caught. His methods are precise, calculated, and terrifyingly effective. He uses sedatives like ketamine or M99 to subdue victims, restrains them in controlled environments, and almost always ends his ritual with a knife to the heart. But what happens when this apex predator encounters other killers who have mastered their own deadly crafts? Today, we will rank 5 iconic fictional killers by their chances of surviving an encounter with Dexter Morgan. We will examine their methods, intelligence levels, psychological profiles, and strategic advantages to determine who would walk away from this ultimate showdown. Before we dive in, honorable mentions go to Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th and Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street. Both are supernatural killers who share Michael Myers' apparent immortality, but they lack his focused stalking methodology. Starting at the bottom of our survival rankings, we have Norman Bates from Alfred Hitchcock's classic thriller, Psycho. Poor Norman represents the most vulnerable target Dexter could possibly encounter. Bates operates the isolated Bates Motel, where his split personality disorder manifests as his deceased mother and drives him to kill unsuspecting guests. With only 6 confirmed kills across the entire franchise, Norman's body count pales in comparison to our other contenders. What makes Norman such easy prey for Dexter? His location stays completely predictable. The Bates Motel sits there like a fixed target that Dexter could watch and infiltrate with minimal effort. Norman's mental illness, while making him dangerous to random victims, actually works against him in a strategic confrontation. His episodes and unpredictable switches between personalities would be easily exploited by someone as methodical as Dexter. From a forensic perspective, Norman leaves evidence everywhere. His motel registration books, the preserved corpse of his mother, and his erratic behavior patterns would provide Dexter with overwhelming proof of guilt. Norman was inspired by real-life serial killer Ed Gein, but unlike Gein's careful rural isolation, Norman operates a business that requires regular human interaction. That creates multiple opportunities for Dexter to study and approach him. Dexter would likely pose as a traveling guest, book a room, and use his forensic expertise to quickly identify evidence of Norman's crimes. The kill would be almost anticlimactic. Norman might sense something wrong and attempt to channel his mother's personality for protection, but against Dexter's calculated approach, it would be like watching a child fight a trained soldier. Joe Goldberg from the Netflix series You is a modern digital predator. He presents as a charming bookstore manager, but his charisma hides stalking, manipulation, and murder. Penn Badgley's character develops obsessive romantic fixations that escalate into violence. With 23 confirmed kills across the series, Joe is far more lethal than Norman Bates, yet his psychological weaknesses make him a manageable threat for Dexter. Joe's greatest strength is also his fatal flaw, his ability to blend into contemporary life while using technology to stalk victims. He's skilled at social media surveillance, lockpicking, and maintaining a likable facade. He was deliberately crafted as a modern interpretation of Ted Bundy, combining classical serial killer charm with digital stalking techniques that would intrigue someone like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. Those same obsessions become his downfall against Dexter. Throughout You, Joe repeatedly makes emotional choices that compromise his security. He keeps trophies, he leaves digital evidence, and above all, he is shown to be deeply afraid of being arrested. The show makes it clear, Joe is a coward when faced with real consequences. Dexter would exploit Joe's romantic fixations by creating a false target, perhaps through social media manipulation, or by positioning someone Joe would naturally gravitate toward. While Joe focuses on his latest obsession, Dexter would methodically gather evidence of his past murders. Joe's digital footprint, despite his skills, would supply ample forensic evidence for someone with Dexter's Miami Metro Police Department expertise. The final confrontation would likely happen in Joe's glass cage or in a bookstore basement, a hunting ground turned into a trap. Joe might try psychological games at first, but against someone who has spent years perfecting emotional detachment, those tactics would fail. Joe's fear of capture would freeze him at the decisive moment, and that fear would seal his fate. Reaching the middle of our survival rankings, we find John Doe from David Fincher's critically acclaimed thriller,
7.
Kevin Spacey's character represents a completely different category of killer, the philosophical terrorist. His methodical execution of the 7 deadly sins through elaborate murder scenarios demonstrates both tactical brilliance and unwavering commitment to his twisted ideology. Similar to John Kramer's Jigsaw philosophy from the Saw franchise, John Doe's strength lies in his patient planning and psychological manipulation. The film establishes him as methodical, exacting, and, worst of all, patient. His ability to research victims, design elaborate crime scenes, and stay ahead of seasoned detectives like Somerset and Mills shows genuine criminal genius. His famous line is, "Wanting people to listen, you can't just tap them on the shoulder anymore. You have to hit them with a sledgehammer." That line reveals his understanding of psychological impact.
7.
Grossed over $327 million worldwide and received critical acclaim, largely due to John Doe's compelling portrayal as an unstoppable force of methodical evil. Unlike our previous killers, John Doe demonstrates the ability to manipulate law enforcement itself, leading detectives exactly where he wants them to go while maintaining complete control of the investigation. However, John Doe's ultimate weakness is his ideological rigidity. His need to complete his masterpiece by punishing sinners according to their specific transgressions would conflict directly with Dexter's code. Dexter kills to satisfy his dark passenger and protect innocent lives, while John Doe kills to make philosophical statements about human nature. This fundamental difference creates an interesting dynamic. John Doe might initially see Dexter as a fellow instrument of justice, even attempting to recruit him for his grand design. But Dexter's pragmatic approach to killing would clash with John Doe's theatrical methodology. The confrontation becomes a battle between two completely different philosophies of murder. Dexter's advantage comes from his forensic background and access to police resources. While John Doe excels at manipulating investigations, he has never faced someone who is both inside law enforcement and operating as a killer. Dexter could potentially identify John Doe's patterns and locations before John Doe recognizes him as a threat rather than a potential ally. The outcome depends on timing. If John Doe is in the middle of executing his 7 deadly sins plan, his focus on that goal might blind him to Dexter's approach. But if John Doe identifies Dexter early enough, his strategic mind and advanced planning could create a deadly trap that even Dexter might not escape. Near the top of our survival rankings stands Arthur Mitchell, better known as the Trinity Killer from Dexter Season 4. John Lithgow's Emmy-winning performance brought this character to life as someone who could genuinely match Dexter Morgan's intelligence and methodical approach. This inclusion might seem like cheating since we know from the show that Dexter ultimately kills Trinity, but Arthur's canonical survival strategies and near victory make him one of the most dangerous opponents Dexter has ever faced. Trinity's kill count of 280 victims over 31 years represents the most successful serial killing career in our entire list, rivaling real-life killers like Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. His ability to maintain a normal family life as a church deacon and high school teacher while executing complex murder cycles demonstrates extraordinary compartmentalization skills that would impress even sophisticated killers like Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. What makes Trinity so dangerous is his perfect camouflage. Unlike other killers who operate from the shadows or maintain elaborate facades, Trinity hides in plain sight as a pillar of his community. His family structure provides both motivation and cover, while his religious presentation disarms potential suspicion. Even Dexter, with all his experience reading people, initially struggled to identify Trinity's true nature. Trinity's survival strategy involves constant movement and variation. His kill cycles take him across different states and communities, preventing any single law enforcement agency from developing a complete profile. His methods vary between different victim types: the bathtub kills, mirror crashes, and hammer murders, which complicates investigative efforts. Most impressively, he maintains his tools and weapons in plain sight, integrated into his legitimate construction work and family activities. The canonical confrontation between Dexter and Trinity in the show reveals why Trinity ranks so high in survival probability. Even though Dexter ultimately wins, Trinity achieves something no other killer in the series manages. He fundamentally changes Dexter's life by killing Rita Morgan and traumatizing Harrison Morgan. This posthumous victory demonstrates Trinity's ability to think several moves ahead and inflict lasting damage even in defeat. In a hypothetical rematch, Trinity's experience with Dexter would make him exponentially more dangerous. He has already proven he can identify Dexter's weaknesses and exploit them. His established networks, resources, and decades of successful operation would provide advantages that even Dexter's forensic skills might not overcome. Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs. At the peak of our survival rankings sits the most terrifying opponent Dexter could possibly face, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Anthony Hopkins' Oscar-winning portrayal of the cannibalistic psychiatrist from The Silence of the Lambs and subsequent films represents everything that makes Dexter dangerous, amplified to genius levels with decades of additional experience. The Silence of the Lambs grossed $272 million worldwide and won 5 Academy Awards, largely due to Hannibal's compelling portrayal as an intellectual monster. Hannibal's intellect is often described as immeasurable, and some compare his raw cognitive ability to that of Stephen Hawking. Unlike Dexter, who learned his skills through Harry Morgan's training and experience, Hannibal appears naturally gifted at reading people, manipulating situations, and staying several steps ahead of any opponent. His background as a psychiatrist gives him a profound understanding of human psychology that goes far beyond Dexter's intuitive abilities. What makes Hannibal uniquely dangerous is his combination of intellectual superiority and operational flexibility. Where Dexter follows rigid patterns and codes, Hannibal adapts fluidly to any situation. His escape from maximum security custody, in which he killed guards and used one of their faces as a disguise, demonstrates creativity and ruthlessness that surpasses anything in Dexter's repertoire. Even sophisticated killers like Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre pale in comparison to Hannibal's refined methodology. Hannibal's survival advantage comes from his ability to manipulate any social situation to his benefit. He is shown forging handcuff keys in maximum security facilities, maintaining elaborate social facades while consuming his victims, and convincing intelligent people to trust him completely. Against Dexter, Hannibal would likely identify the threat immediately and begin psychological warfare designed to break down Dexter's carefully constructed emotional barriers. The confrontation would become a chess match between two master manipulators, but with Hannibal holding significant advantages. His superior intellect and psychological training would allow him to deconstruct Dexter's motivations and methods. Hannibal might even attempt to cure Dexter by forcing him to confront the trauma underlying his killing compulsions and his relationship with his dark passenger. Unlike other killers who might try to fight or flee, Hannibal would probably welcome the challenge of facing someone like Dexter. He might see it as an opportunity to study a fascinating specimen while proving his intellectual superiority. The kill, if it happened at all, would likely involve elaborate psychological torture designed to break Dexter's mind before ending his life. But we have not discussed our wild card entry, Michael Myers from John Carpenter's Halloween franchise. John Carpenter described him as almost a supernatural force and unkillable, and Michael's apparent immortality would pose an unprecedented challenge to Dexter's conventional methods. The Halloween franchise built much of its success on Michael's unstoppable nature, grossing over $700 million worldwide on modest budgets. Michael's supernatural durability means he can survive multiple gunshot wounds, fires, explosions, and other trauma that would kill normal humans. In recent films, he is 61 years old, yet he still demonstrates the strength to overpower much younger opponents and perform feats of endurance that defy human limitations. His blank, emotionless demeanor and seeming inability to feel pain or fear would make Dexter's usual intimidation tactics completely ineffective. Unlike other slasher icons like Ghostface from Scream, who rely on surprise and psychological games, Michael represents a pure, relentless physical threat. The challenge Michael poses is not intellectual. He shows little strategic thinking or long-term planning compared to the more sophisticated killers in our ranking. Instead, the danger is purely physical. How do you kill something that might literally be unkillable? Dexter's sedatives might not work on Michael's unusual physiology. Dexter's restraint techniques would be useless against supernatural strength. Even if Dexter managed to deliver what should be a fatal wound, Michael might simply get back up and continue his pursuit. This creates a fascinating paradox in our rankings. Michael Myers ranks highly not because of intelligence or skill, but because he might be the one opponent Dexter literally cannot kill using conventional methods. A confrontation like that would force Dexter to abandon everything he knows about murder and survival, facing an enemy that operates by completely different rules from the rational killers he usually hunts. Looking at our complete rankings, we see 5 distinct survival strategies against Dexter's methodical approach. Norman Bates fails because mental illness makes him vulnerable and predictable. Joe Goldberg's emotional weaknesses and cowardice doom him despite his technical skills. John Doe's ideological rigidity provides openings for a pragmatic opponent like Dexter. Trinity's decades of experience and near-equal competence make him unusually dangerous. Hannibal Lecter's intellectual superiority would allow him to outmaneuver Dexter at every turn. Michael Myers represents the pure physical threat that conventional murder techniques might not overcome. These rankings reveal something important about Dexter Morgan himself. His greatest strengths, forensic expertise, emotional control, and methodical planning work best against opponents who play by similar rules. When facing intellectual superiors like Hannibal, or potentially supernatural entities like Michael, Dexter's human limitations become critical vulnerabilities. The ultimate lesson from these hypothetical confrontations is that even apex predators have natural enemies. Dexter Morgan might be television's most competent serial killer, but fiction has created monsters that could challenge even his considerable abilities. In the deadly game of predator versus predator, intelligence, experience, and sheer inhuman durability all provide different paths to victory. Whether you are rooting for justice or simply fascinated by the mechanics of fictional murder, these matchups remind us why these characters have captured our imaginations for decades. Each represents a different nightmare scenario, a unique exploration of what makes killers truly dangerous. And in the end, that is exactly what makes them so compelling to analyze and rank. But what about real serial killers? We just ranked fiction's deadliest against Dexter, but how would actual monsters from history stack up? Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Zodiac Killer. These are not movie villains with plot armor. They are real predators with documented kills and proven tactics. Click the next video to see how the real-life killers would fare against television's Bay Harbor Butcher.